My daughters were born here in Georgia. My wife and I adopted them when they were 3 months old. So bringing them back here to experience their country.
Oh, look, he's waving. He's waving. He just stopped to wave.
And then to meet and spend time with their birth families, for me, is a very special experience. My father was Dr. Kelvin Pirs. He was considered the most dangerous and influential white supremacist or neo-Nazi in North America for over a 30-year period. He was physically and emotionally abusive from the time I was probably 2 years old. And he was also the author of the book, The Turner Diaries, where a white nationalist overthrow of the US government happened. There were a lot of parallels between that book and what happened in the United States on January 6th. Hate is a disease. You know, hate is a mental disease. It's the product of a deluded mind. And I would offer that there's an alternative. There's a different choice that you can make. We all have the choice. This is the Javari Monastery. So Javari is the Georgian word for cross.
Kelvin Pirs putuje od svoje kuće u Sjedinjenim Državama do Južnog Kavkaza u Gruziji.
I love to walk up. It's a little steep in places, but it's exhilarating.
Kelvin je ovde sa svoje dve usvojene ćerke, Marijam i Marikom. Obe su rođene u Gruziji u razmaku od 3 dana, od različitih majki, u decembru 1995. godine. Vratile su se kako bi se povezale sa svojom biološkom porodicom i saznale više o svom gruzijskom poreklu.
Inside of here, they have like a secret stairwell that goes all the way down to the river.
Za Kelvina ovo je put isceljenja, a za njegove ćerke put otkrivanja.
It was really surreal coming to Georgia in the first place and being around so many people that look like you. That was mind-blowing to me. It's just opened my eyes, I think, a little bit more, and I'm more grateful for what I have.
Na otvorenoj pijaci u glavnom gradu Tbilisiju, Kelvin je sa svojim ćerkama napravio pauzu, pre upoznavanja sa Marikinom biološkom porodicom. Uz pomoć prijatelja Gila Đulijana i Like Merabišvili kupili su hranu u izobilju.
Lika, I need a translation of long rice and round rice.
Oni će sve to dostaviti Marikinim biološkim roditeljima, koji žive u selu na periferiji prestonice.
We get beans and rice and pasta and flour and sugar and salt and yeast. And it's basically, you know, the subsistence type food that they need.
Natovareni krenuli su na put ka selu Cerovani. Ovo je 3. put da će se Marika sresti sa svojom biološkom majkom i braćom i sestrama. Saznala je da ima polubrata, Omara, koji je pomagao da se istovari hrana.
It's always exciting, and they're always really excited to see me. And I like bringing them food and presents, and it's just nice to be able to spend time with them. Just trying to imagine myself living in like this and in these conditions, and it's really always hard to imagine myself doing that. Makes me extra grateful coming here because I know what I could have ended up living like.
Marika Pirs prvi put se susrela sa svojom biološkom majkom 2013. godine, kada je prvi put krenula na put u Gruziju sa svojih 17 godina. Uz pomoć dokumenata o rođenju, Kelvin je uspeo da pronađe porodicu i da se sprijatelji s njima. Nakon što je stekao njihovo poverenje kroz par godina, bio je spreman da im otkrije istinu.
So we decided that we were going to tell the grandmother. She was obviously the matriarch of the family, and you could tell just from the dynamics that she basically ran that family. And my translator was like, you know, does such and such date, you know, is that a memory of yours? And she got this weirdest look on her face, and she was just like, no. And when my translator was like, "Are you sure?" And then she just like turned and then she looked at me and she like, we made eye contact and I was just smiling at her. And all of a sudden she just like broke into this big smile. And then she turned to my translator and said, "Yes." And she goes, "Oh my gosh." And she's like, "That's her." And she goes, "I've always wondered what happened to that girl. I've always wondered what happened to that girl."
Baka je potom rekla Marikinoj biološkoj majci da joj se vratila ćerka koju je napustila.
And she immediately busted out into tears and she ran off into the woods. And she disappeared for like a long time. And then all of a sudden she just reappeared. And she went up to my translator and said, "Can I see Marika alone in the house?" And I went to Marika, you know, she was just, you know, a young kid. I said, "Do you want me to come in with you?" And she goes, "No, Dad, I've got this." And she went in there and when she came back out, she said the first thing she did was she grabbed me and started kissing me all over my face and all over my chest. And yeah, that was quite a dramatic experience.
Jezička barijera može biti izazov, ali nakon 3 posete Marika je polako počela da gradi vezu sa svojom biološkom majkom.
She looked a lot like me, and so did my little sister, look, I think, identical to me. So that was really cool to see. But she, I think, is shy. They're all really shy.
Kelvin Pirs takođe provodi vreme sa svojom biološkom majkom. Ovo je drugi put da su se srele, 8 godina nakon prvog susreta.
It's like you're getting to know someone. You know, usually like you get to know someone and then you build a relationship with them. It's like we already have this inherent relationship and you know that there's love there, but you don't know them as a person. So it's a very unique experience.
Marija i njena biološka majka našle su se sa Kelvinom i ostalima kako bi probali gruzijsku kuhinju.
It's been so fascinating to learn how similar we are. I was surprisingly shocked at how much I felt we didn't look alike, but I could pick up on mannerisms right away that I was just like, oh my gosh. So it kind of was just as much about the body language and the energy as it was the looks.
Marijam se prvi put srela sa svojom biološkom majkom 2013. Kao i kod Marikine biološke porodice, Kelvin je pronašao Marijaminu biološku majku, sprijateljio se sa njom i izgradio vezu. Međutim, u početku, kada joj je otkrio da je Marijam njena biološka ćerka, njena reakcija nije bila pozitivna.
When we told her, she went catatonic for like 10 minutes. She just hung her head down and stared at the floor for 10 minutes and wouldn't talk to us. And finally, when she started talking, her first reaction was, "I never wanted to hear about this child ever again for the rest of my life. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I never wanted to hear about her."
Ali nakon nekoliko sati, kada ju je prošao šok, Marijamina rođena majka se predomislila.
And that night she called my translator and said, "I want to see her again. I want to see her tomorrow, and I'm sorry for the way I reacted." And so we met at a restaurant the next day, and she came with a family album of pictures of what it was like when she grew up as a kid. Now, every single year on her birthday, she calls. Every time I visit her, she asks for more pictures of Marijami. Her apartment walls are covered with pictures of her daughter. You know, it took a while, but it turned out to be a good thing.
Marijamina i Marikina majka po usvojenju, Kelvin Pirs, nije mogla da ode na taj put. Ostala je u Sjedinjenim Državama kako bi vodila porodični posao uređenja kuća. Ali u mislima je sa svojim ćerkama.
So this is a locket with me and my sister. It was my mom's, and she gave it to me about 6 months ago.
Kada su Marijam i Marika rođene, Gruzija je prolazila kroz razornu ekonomsku i energetsku krizu. U godinama nakon proglašenja nezavisnosti od Sovjetskog saveza 1991. vladala je nestašica struje i vode. Korupcija je divljala, a uslovi u sirotištima bili su često užasni. Kelvin i Kelvin bili su među prvim parovima koji su se prijavili za međunarodno usvojenje dece iz Gruzije.
When I saw my daughters for the first time, yeah, it was extremely emotional for me. When they brought those girls in, You know, there was no heat in the hospitals, and they were all swaddled up in these blankets. It's like they brought in these wrapped up packages, and then they laid them on a table and then unwrapped them, and I saw them for the first time. I was transformed. It was just like, I became a different person. It was like, I am their father now, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure this adoption goes through.
Kao mlađi muškarac, Kelvin nije mogao da zamisli da postane roditelj, a kamoli da ima svoju biološku decu.
I was terrified of the idea of propagating my genes. I had no idea why my dad was such a terrible father, and he treated us awful. Lots and lots and lots of beatings, lots of really just rejection. So I was just like, there's just no way that I'm going to take the chance that A, I would be a father like him, and B, that I would create other children that would feel the way I do.
Sve sumnje koje su Kevina mučile godinama o očinstvu ubrzo su nestale, pošto su on i njegova žena odgajili ćerke u američkoj saveznoj državi Virginija. Kelvin je napisao pismo svom ocu od kog se udaljio, u kom ga je obavestio o usvajanju.
There was no reaction at all. And I was just like thinking about it. I was like, it's because they're not white enough for him. That's why he didn't respond. That's why he doesn't acknowledge them.
Kelvinov otac, Kelvin Pirs, bio je osnivač i lider uticajne nacionalne alijanse, grupe belih suprematista u Sjedinjenim Državama.
To the neighborhood kids, my name wasn't Kelvin, it was Nazi. And so we got beat up a lot.
Kelvin i njegov brat su odgajani tako da nastave očevu rasističku ideologiju mržnje.
You know, I remember as a young kid, looking at black kids in my class and wondering about it and wondering what is it like to be black and to feel subhuman like they must, because my dad said they were not humans, they were subhuman, they were more like animals. And I believed it. And I would look at my skin and I would be like, oh, I'm so grateful that I'm white and that I don't have their condition. And and I was kind of amazed, I was curious, but I was also afraid.
Tek kada je krenuo na studije, Kelvin je počeo da preispituje očevu rasističku doktrinu i da formira sopstvene stavove o svetu.
By the time I left home when I was 18 years old, I was severely damaged. I hated myself and I hated a lot of other people. You know, I believed everything that my dad taught me about Jews and blacks and other races and how they were responsible for so many ills of our society. But, I soon started learning differently, when I started meeting people from all over the world. One of my first roommates in college was a South American man. And I really liked this guy, and I thought he was really intelligent. I thought he was, a thoughtful, empathetic individual. And I learned a lot of things that my dad had taught me was wrong.
U vreme dok je Kelvin bio na studijama, njegov otac je napustio porodicu i trajno se preselio na prostrano imanje, gde je regrutovao sledbenike i žive u zajednici sa velikim brojem drugih žena. Pod pseudonimom napisao je i objavio uticajnu knjigu 1978. pod nazivom Turnerovi dnevnici. Ovaj ultranasilni roman o ratu među rasama, američki federalni istražni biro FBI nazvao je Biblijom rasističke desnice.
Well, the vision that he was promoting was a white ethno state, and he believed that racial or ethnic cleansing was the way to get there. And so the book was, in a sense, a blueprint for what that would look like, what it would look like if it actually happened.
It talked a lot about, hanging Jews and blacks and interracial couples from the city streets on light poles. It talked about a bombing of a federal building that was almost identical to the bombing that Timothy McVeigh carried out in Oklahoma City in 1995.
About a third of the building has been blown away, and you can see just smoke and debris and fire on the ground.
As a matter of fact, Timothy McVeigh admitted that the Turner Diaries was his motivation for the bombing of Oklahoma City Federal Building.
Više od 160 ljudi je poginulo u najsmrtonosnijem terorističkom napadu na tlu Sjedinjenih Američkih Država do 11. septembra. Timothy McVeigh je osuđen i pogubljen.
And the FBI actually found a copy of the book in the car he was driving the day of the bombing.
Turnerovi dnevnici takođe opisuju nasilni napad na zgradu američkog Kapitola, zbacivanje vlade,
There's also, the day of the rope.
I vešanje zakonodavaca.
So there were a lot of parallels between that book and what happened in the United States on January 6th. The attempted insurrection on our government.
They broke the glass. Everybody stay down. Get down.
Many of the things that happened that day on the Capitol were seen as evoking the book. So there was the sort of gallows scene out in front of the Capitol, and there was a hanging noose there. And many people said that that was sort of referencing the day of the rope in the book. Of the 800 people that made it into the Capitol, we don't yet know how many of them, if any of them, actually read the Turner Diaries. But I do think what you see in the Turner Diaries is something very similar to what you see that happened that day. And there are these sort of consistent themes on the far right. And then the other thing that's just so eerily similar is the idea that the only way you're going to get what you want as a white nationalist is through violence. So it's very anti-democratic.
Kelvinov otac je umro 2002. Gotovo 2 decenije pre pokušaja puča na Kapitolu.
And to be honest, I was like, I'm so glad my dad's not alive now and that my dad isn't like trying to be a leader of this, because I felt personally that the only reason that the attack on the Capitol didn't get any worse than it was is because they never really had a unified leader. It was kind of a bunch of factions that came together, but if they had had a really good, charismatic leader, like my dad was during the National Alliance, it could have gone a lot worse.
Kako je politička retorika u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama postala narastajuće ekstremna i polarizovana, nakon predsjedničkih izbora 2016. Kelvin je osjećao da mora da progovori o belom suprematizmu i svom bolnom detinjstvu. Objavio je knjigu 2020. godine.
Sins of my father, growing up with America's most dangerous white supremacist. While I was writing that book, especially writing about my experiences with my dad, that it was a very cathartic, very healing experience for me.
Put do ozdravljenja od bolne mladosti za Kelvina je bio dug. Ali njegovo iskustvo mu je takođe omogućilo da pomogne drugima koji su trpeli traume u detinjstvu.
I'm so happy to see the sun.
On i njegove ćerke su na putu ka sirotištu u gruzijskom selu Cilkani.
We got the greatest gift of our lives from Georgia, our 2 daughters, and we should do something to help these kids.
How you doing? Hi. Good to see you.
Ovo je jedna od 4 kuće za decu koje vodi Kelvinova dobrotvorna organizacija osnovana 2007. Fondacija Božansko dete.
So the kids here, they range in age from, about 8 years old up to 18. When they're 18, they graduate out of the system.
Oko 10 dece živi u svakoj od kuća sa negovateljicama. Ideja je da se stvori topla atmosfera.
Ask him if he still has his, Superman Mayasori?
Kelvin posećuje ovo mesto otprilike 2 puta godišnje, a od kada je osnovao fondaciju, oko 30 puta je putovao u Gruziju. To mu je omogućilo da upozna decu lično i nauči nešto gruzijskog.
Yes?
Yes.
Buti. Buti.
Značajan deo budžeta za domove za decu dolazi iz donacija koje Kelvin prikuplja u Sjedinjenim Državama. Tokom godina on je sam donirao $10.000 sopstvenog novca. Gruzijska vlada pomaže tako što pokriva deo troškova. Menadžerka fondacije Božansko dete u Gruziji, Lali Cervadze, u kontaktu je sa lokalnim preduzetnicima, od kojih traži donacije u hrani. Ona je takođe dečiji psiholog i obučena je da se nosi sa problemima koje mogu imati deca bez roditelja.
ბავშვები, რომლებიც არიან ძალადობის მსხვერპლი, ოჯახისგან, მშობლებისგან, ბავშვები, რომლებიც არიან უსახკარო ობოლი ბავშვები, ყველა ეს ბავშვები ხვდებიან ჩვენთან.
U domovima se radi na tome da deca nauče veštine koje će im kasnije pomoći da nađu posao i postanu nezavisni.
ბავშვებს, რომელსაც არ აქვთ მიჯაჭვულობა, ბავშვებს, რომელსაც დაენგრათ ცხოვრება, მათ არავინ არ უყვართ, ხო? მათ ბევრჯერ ატკინეს, დააზიანეს. ასეთი ბავშვებისთვის ძნელია, ასეთ ბავშვებს ძალიან ძნელია აჩვენო, რომ გიყვარს, ამას დრო უნდა, მიჯაჭვულობა უნდა ჩამოყალიბდეს, ამ ბავშვების ნდობა უნდა მოვიპოვოთ.
Sve su ovo izazovi koje Kelvin donekle razume. Zbog toga što je sam imao teško detinjstvo.
They would look at you with suspicion. They would scowl at you. They don't feel wanted by their parents. They don't feel loved by anybody. And so I made a decision then that I was going to do whatever I could to break through to these kids. So I just kept smiling at them, making eye contact, and one by one, those barriers came down.
Good job.
Tokom fudbalske utakmice Marika i Mirjam imaju priliku da upoznaju decu iz doma.
Handball!
To je također prilika za njih da iskuse još malo gruzijske kulture i jezik.
Karalioki.
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 Like apple, but citrusy, maybe?
Kurdzeni.
Gudzeni. Some grapes.
Kurdzeni.
Gudzeni.
Kurdzeni.
Gudzeni.
Kelvinove česte posete Gruziji kako bi radio u dečijim domovima olakšale su mu da pronađe biološke majke svojih ćerki i poveže ih sa njihovim korenima.
You know, the idea really started with I wanted to try to create some sort of physical link between my daughters and their birth country.
Po povratku u Tbilisi, Kelvin i njegove ćerke posećuju dom Božansko dete u okrugu Didi Digomi.
Hello. Oh, that's a big smile. Yes.
To je novi objekat za decu sa teškim fizičkim i mentalnim smetnjama.
You know, it was such a traumatic thing for the parents when, you know, their child was born with these severe disabilities, and some of the parents didn't feel like they had the resources to deal with it.
Ponekad je porodica u mogućnosti da uzme svoje dete nazad, ako se njihova finansijska situacija popravi.
And there is a talk there that parents may take him.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Wow.
Gil Julian je također jedan od osnivača fondacije Božansko dete u Gruziji i uložio je značajnu sumu sopstvenog novca kako bi obezbedio da dečiji domovi ostanu u ispravnom stanju.
The water problem is all the way around the wall.
Sa svojim tehničkim iskustvom Gil se bavi svim problemima koji se pojave.
I'm pretty sure that this is not a plumbing issue,
So it's a surface.
but rather a room environment issue.
Gil je imao ključnu ulogu u renoviranju prvog sirotišta koje je Božansko dete preuzelo u gradu Saguramo 2007. godine, u kom je živjelo oko 40-ak dece.
It was a abandoned Soviet 1960s high school. They were living in kind of dormitories and they were awful. They were worse than awful, actually. And we put in a new heating system, and new walls, and a new roof, and new doors and windows.
Dve sestre siročad, Nino i Marisa, provele su deo svog detinjstva odrastajući u domu Saguramo. Danas obe sestre idu na fakultet. Nino studira biznis i marketing i zahvalna je Kelvinu i Gilu.
ფიქრობ რომ ჩვენ გაგვახარა, ალბათ არ ვიქნებოთ ასეთი ბედნიერები და არ გვექნებოდა ესეთი მაგარი ბავშვობა, როგორიც გქონდა. სწავლაშიც ანუ ესენი რო არ ყოფილიყვნენ, ვერ ვისწავლედი და ეხლა სტუდენტი ვერ გავხდებოდა, ვერ მექნებოდა და ვერ ვიფიქრებდი საერთოდ მომავალზე.
Marisa studira teologiju i nada se da će biti predavačica i baviti se dobrotvornim radom.
პროდუქტში Kelvin არის ჩვენთვის მისაბაძია პიროვნება თუ როგორ შეიძლება ადამიანი ეხმარებოდეს ასე ყველაფერს, ანუ ასეთი ხელგაშლილი იყოს ხალხის მიმართ და ისეთი ხალხის მიმართ, რომელიც თავისი ქვეყნის მოქალაქენი არ არიან.
Gruzijska vlada pristala je da plati školarinu za Nino, Marisu i sve druge tinejdžere iz dečijih domova, sve dok mogu da polože prijemne ispite. Ali ako se ne upišu na fakultet, siroča će ostati sama onog trenutka kada se po zakonu smatraju odraslima.
Basically here in Georgia, once the kids reach age 18 or they graduate from high school, they're no longer supported. And they basically have to leave. And so Gil and I immediately made a decision that we're not going to let these kids fall through the cracks. So half of our work, if not more than that, is helping the graduates and getting them, situated to where they can take care of themselves.
Vrativši se na ulice gruzijske prestonice, Marijam i Marika Pirs posvećuju pažnju mačkama i psima lutalicama koji tumaraju Tbilisijem.
It's like really sad to see the strays because they have fleas and they're malnourished and like don't have a home and sometimes they're not treated very nicely.
Looks like you attracted a crowd.
Quick, they're coming. Don't have any more. Go away.
Marika je zainteresovana da sazna više o grupama za prava životinja u Gruziji.
And see how I can help more than just give a few stray cats and dogs some like food.
Posle više od nedelju dana u Gruziji, Marika i Marijam se spremaju da se vrate svojim životima u Sjedinjenim Državama. Zahvalne na još jednoj prilici da se približe svojim biološkim korenima.
And it's just really comforting to know that there are people, halfway across the world that love you. That's really special.
Marijam kaže da joj je putovanje dalo i druge uvide.
I always was so fascinated with genetics and also nature versus nurture, and having this unique experience enforces for me that we all have our own identity, who we are raised with and who our family is and our background. It can tell a story of the past, but it doesn't tell a story of the future. That's where you take your power back, where you really stand for something that you believe in.
Kelvin Pirs planira da se uskoro ponovo vrati u Gruziju kako bi nastavio rad sa siročadi u domovima za decu. Zahvalan je što je pronašao drugačiji put od svog oca.
It would have been so easy for me to live a life of hate just like he did. When you hate other people, you're in essence, you're hating yourself. I think probably the most significant thing for me is the amount of healing that I have encountered personally as a result of dealing with these kids.
You like? Whoa.
And so we can choose to hate the other, or we can choose to love the other